This is a Fox News alert. Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, and this is the 5. Just after 7 a.m. this morning, an act of heinous political violence broke out in the suburbs outside Washington, D.C. A gunman named James Thomas Hodgkinson, a 66-year-old from Illinois who belonged to a Facebook group called Terminate the Republican Party, opened fire with a rifle at a group of Republican members of Congress. The GOP lawmakers were practicing for the annual congressional baseball game, which will still take place tomorrow night. 5 people were wounded in the shooting, including Steve Scalise, the number 3 House Republican leader. He is recovering from surgery now in the hospital, and President Trump just made a surprise visit. More on that in a moment. Police shot the gunman dead, and a witness captured this dramatic footage of the shooting.
Do we know where he's at? Do we know where he's at?
He's behind home plate. You call 911?
I assume people have been calling 911 already.
Joining us now, Doug McElway. He is outside MedStar Washington Hospital Center, where Congressman Scalise underwent surgery earlier today and has also been visited by the president. Doug, how is the congressman doing?
Well, the last report we've had from the hospital is that he is in critical condition, that he suffered critical injuries and is in critical condition. But information from this hospital has been very, very sparse, unusually so. I've never seen anything like this, in fact, when you're dealing with a high-level public figure who has been the victim of a gunshot wound. There have been a grand total of 2 communications from this hospital. One about 10 hours ago, it was a tweet, and another about 5 hours ago, just over 5 hours ago, another tweet, and that has been the sum total. We know right now that Mr. Scalise is being visited by the President and First Lady, a visit which was done very quiet and sort of a spontaneous visit. We didn't see helicopters overhead, as is par for the course when you have a presidential motorcade going through town. We even understood that from the pool that some of the traffic lights in town were obeyed by the presidential motorcade. But they came here in an entrance not where we are. This is a huge complex encompassing not just the MedStar Washington Hospital Center, but also a VA hospital and the Children's National Medical Center. So they came in some entrance that we have not seen, bearing flowers, which they have now delivered to the House Majority Whip. It is safe to say, and we're not hearing this from the hospital, but it is safe to say that given the fact that he was shot in the hip with a high-powered rifle, that it would not be beyond the realm of possibility that he will be facing numerous surgeries ahead. So devastating is a bullet wound of that sort. Oftentimes, and we don't know this to be the case, but oftentimes in these kinds of injuries, you're looking at a team of doctors trying to repair and stem the blood flow and then come back at a later date to do reconstructive surgery. Because these kinds of bullets can absolutely wreak havoc on human tissue and human bone. And so it would be safe to say that Mr. Scalise is looking at a long, long recovery indeed. There is another patient here at the hospital. It is the Capitol Police Officer, Crystal Griner, who was shot in the foot. We also believe that the second Capitol Police Officer, Mr. Bailey, was brought here, but his wounds were not from the gunshot. They may have been inflicted from just the chaos and was brought here. He did not need treatment and was released. The head of the Capitol Police Office paid a visit here early in the afternoon and praised his officers here. We also know that a couple of the other victims, Zach Barth, for example, a staffer for Congressman Roger Williams, is being treated at an undisclosed hospital. We only know that because he tweeted that he had been injured in the shooting, but that he was okay. And we later heard from a family spokesperson that he was wounded in the calf muscle. But the President and First Lady are still here as best we know. Hope to have more information later on. Back to you.
All right, Doug, thanks for that update. And obviously our thoughts and prayers with the family members and with Mr. SCALISE as well. It's a very sad case. Now, we want to learn more about this deranged gunman, and his brother has told the New York Times that Hodgkinson was distraught over President Trump's election. And joining us now with more is Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge. Catherine, good evening.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. Tonight, the ATF is tracing 2 weapons, a shotgun and a rifle, as the name of the suspect identified by law enforcement as 66-year-old James Hodgkinson tells Fox about an incident in Belleville, Illinois last March that only stopped after police were called in.
He pointed the rifle towards the center of the timber back there and started shooting across the field, you know, and it was a high-powered rifle, and I thought, good grief, there's houses over there.
Facebook page bearing the suspect's name includes photos of Bernie Sanders as well as anti-Trump rhetoric reading, "Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company." Spokesperson for the American Society of Home Inspectors confirms James Hodgkinson was a member of the trade association but dropped out in 2015. A few years earlier, an Illinois newspaper reports tonight that the suspect sent letters to the editor railing against Republicans and tax policy. In this August 2012 letter, Hodgkinson writes, "I have never said life sucks, only the policies of the Republicans." Late today, the FBI said they are focused firmly on timing and motive.
Why do you think he chose the game? Is there any information yet of why the game?
What do you mean?
Why did he choose today? Why did he choose?
Oh, I have no indication of why. Why today at all? No, sir.
Or this
Security
place?
being
Or this place.
And the FBI said that they believe the suspect got to Virginia in March and since has been living out of that white cargo van, Kimberly.
All right, Catherine, thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll take it around the table. Greg, you know, just really a tragic day. Starting off at 7 a.m., you have people, you know, getting together to practice for the big game for tomorrow. And then you have someone specifically singling them out because they are Republicans and asking.
Yeah, I mean, the first thought I had in the morning was a comical one, which was like, who gets up at 6:30 to play baseball? And it just didn't make sense to me. But then I started hearing everyone talking about how one needs to calm your rhetoric and we need to start re-examining how we deal with each other. I don't know if that's right, because I do feel that we should be angry, and we should be angry at the angry people. The people who have been waging a campaign of rage for decades, since the beginning of the Bill Ayers movement to the Antifa, who romanticize violence and romanticize revolution. This is not new. This is radicalism in its purest sense, and this is not senseless violence. People call this stuff senseless. No, there is a purpose to this. There was a reason why I did this. A story came out today about Betsy DeVos, right? Remember her? Yep. She's needed $8 million worth of security since she got the job for the last 8 months or so since she became known when she was going to get the job. $8 million for security. Why is it? Because attacks on her were implicitly sanctioned by the media and by liberals because they felt that her beliefs on school choice and her beliefs on education were harmful. So it wasn't that she was wrong. It was that she was evil. And so if you look at all of the arguments that are directed at Trump or directed at Republicans, it's not that their policies are wrong. It's that they are immoral and that they are evil. And that sanctions the violent behavior. And that is not a new idea. That is an idea that has been around since the late 60s and the early 70s. This is a culmination of a toxic doctrine. We cannot be surprised by this. This guy is a leftist radical.
Yeah. Alt left. Okay, Dana, your thoughts?
Well, just to add to that, I think that one thing that is fueling it or accelerating it has been that social media then allows you to funnel your desire for reaffirmation of your own beliefs, and you can block out other people, and you can join groups that make you feel like you belong. So if you want to hate Republicans, and now there's a place for you to go. It used to be that maybe you read the paper and you were mad, or you listened to the radio, you turn it off, and then you go out and spend some time with your family. But now you can spend the entire day fueling your rage from both sides. But on this side, I agree with Greg that on the left, we've been talking about this for a while.
Right.
And we've been seeing sort of the ramp up of that. It's not just resistance, which is what they called for. It is persistence in the resistance in terms of trying to destroy them. Make no mistake, you know, political speech can inspire violence. And I would say that I would call this political terrorism because he attacked these men because they were Republican in order to advance his own political ideas. Terrorism, the definition of it is that you attack innocent people to advance your ideology or your political idea. And that's what I think that we should be calling it, and be very open about that. Because if we sweep it under the rug, or like a year from now, if the newspaper writes, well, there was a shooting, and they don't actually talk about, they just talk about the gun violence part and not the actual, the ideological reason for why they were targeted, that would be a huge mistake and a problem for us moving forward to try to solve this overall.
It's so disturbing, just thinking, I'm seeing his picture back there and what his family must, be going through, and such a well-liked person, very affable. Jesse, Dana brings up a great point. It's that groupthink saturation that you can just soak in it all day and find that positive reinforcement that really tells you, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Look, all these people, I have found them. They agree with me. And it really builds upon itself as a catalyst to what we see here, which is violence.
I do want to be clear, this guy bears full responsibility for the shooting.
Absolutely.
Yet, he traffics in an atmosphere that is producing vile content and allows people to kind of blur the line between right and wrong. And the question needs to be asked is, are the producers of this fake news and the hoaxes and the slanderous rhetoric, are they at all responsible for something like this? And that question remains to be answered. I think Dana's right. This is political terrorism. This was democracy being shot today. When you attack a congressman, you're attacking the Constitution. So the neighbor suggested that the Democratic rhetoric might have contributed to this. The brother suggested this guy was very disturbed by Trump's election. And just looking at his social media account and his letters to the editor, sadly, this is par for the course for a hardcore anti-Trump Democrat. And there's millions of people's Facebook pages and social media accounts that look exactly like this guy's here. And that's scary. To say, you're a part of the resistance. He's an Occupy Wall Street guy. He calls Donald Trump a traitor and an a-hole. And he's a Putin colluder. And, this stuff builds up when you call Republicans greedy racists and you kind of mix it into this toxic stew. Political hysteria potentially has consequences. And people on Twitter were celebrating this, which is also very alarming. And I think the resistance needs to start resisting committing acts of violence. And you just have to wonder, has this hatred permeated the culture so much where people need to really take a step back and reflect and say, what kind of responsibility do I bear for contributing to this stuff?
I want your reflections. I know you have a lot of friends in D.C. and people that work for the government.
Yeah, actually, my son worked for him.
Yeah.
Really? So he knows Scalise very well, and Scalise knows him and would greet us as father and son. So, for me, it's like, wow, I can't believe this. To me, I don't want to go to the level of this deranged, deviant shooter and talk about the politics here, because I don't think the politics are what's relevant. I think we've got somebody who was deeply disturbed, Kimberly. And I think the record will show, without much effort, that this is a guy, as we saw the neighbor talking about him shooting in the woods. Apparently, he'd been living in the lobby of the Y in Alexandria for several months. He had foster children, and one of them, Greg and I were talking about earlier, just burned herself to death after 2 months in her house. Another one subject to domestic battery at his hands and arrested. He was arrested for that, though not convicted. So what you see is a picture of someone who is really awfully troubled. You could go back to Hinckley and the shooting of President Reagan. You can come forward to, I forget the name of the woman who was involved with the Gerald Ford shooting.
Sarah Jane Moore, Squeaky Fromm.
Squeaky Fromm, yeah. A lot of really out-of-their-mind people. So you have a highly polarized country, as Jesse was saying a moment ago. But Jesse also said, and I thought this really spoke to my heart, you got to hold people responsible on a personal level for taking this kind of action. We can have conversations about why someone with this record is allowed to have a gun in our country, but let's for just a second stop and say, this is not acceptable. You can't do this. These are people, I'm a Democrat, and this guy and my son more than friends. So I'm telling you, this is horrible. This is not good.
The thing is, though, right now the country is going through a period of anxiety because we have a large faction that refuses to accept the reality of the presidency. I'm not saying that induces people to violence, but under this weird cloud, people are acting strangely. And I know that capitalism and free markets, they don't advocate revolution, but socialism does. Socialism has always advocated revolution. Radical leftism has always advocated violent revolution. So this guy was essentially radicalized by the left-wing media. He was radicalized. He was troubled. He was a violent, disgusting human being. But he ingested this information. We can't stop the information.
But he took a metaphor as instruction.
Yeah, exactly. But you look at the campus free speech stuff that's going on right now, the riots at Berkeley, the Antifa. There was a woman in Harrisburg over the weekend that took a pole with a nail at the end of it. I want you to Google this at home. Google Harrisburg horse and pole. She had a pole with a nail on it and attacked the police horse with this pole, stabbing it in the neck. That's Antifa. These are the anti-fascists. These are the anti-fascists. These are the people that are saying the other side is evil, but that point justifies their destructive and deadly behavior.
It's awful when you just see, like, yeah, we're talking about just the level of discourse. And can you imagine? I can't help but think, you know, God forbid, if this was someone who had worked for, you know, President Trump or his campaign or anything, I mean, just the reaction of what it would be. You know, and I've heard people today blaming President Trump for something like this. I mean, it's just so vile and so disgusting. People really have to, like, take a moment and think about what they're doing and what they're saying and why they're, like, punishing people and accusing people because they have a certain political viewpoint of being racist or sexist.
Right, and remember when Gabby Giffords was shot, and people were saying, oh, well, it's all the stuff coming from the right and the talk shows, and people on the right said, no, you got to hold the person responsible, and this was a troubled, deranged individual. I remember the right said that. And I think you have to hold to that standard, that really, I don't care what you say, I don't care how mad we get at each other and you guys get at me around this table, nobody wants to stoop to that level. You got to be able to talk, to defend your point, to make your point. But I don't think this guy necessarily fits into the political line of debate and discourse in our country. I suspect that he is a sick, mentally sick, unstable man.
I still think you can be mentally unstable and still traffic in a lot of the political narratives that are accusing the president of being a traitor, of delegitimizing the president, of calling him a Nazi, of calling him someone that's trying to subvert the democracy. And when you feed that to people and you pump that into their brain every single day to an unstable individual and something like this happens, you start to think, you know what? Maybe some of the stuff that we're putting out there isn't healthy.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, it's true because it's overwhelming saturation. It's not a small minority of people that are doing it. It's the mainstream media. Right. You know, it's politics across the board.
But the big lie and the big hypocrisy is that we've been living in a place where the left has been saying the right rhetoric is what leads to violence.
Right.
Not
Think
really.
Think about that over the break.